Have you ever wondered why? As you peel back the layers of illusion and step onto the path of self-discovery, a profound emptiness often takes root where you expected fulfillment. It's a paradox, isn't it? The more you see, the more you understand, the more you awaken. The more the world seems to lose its vibrant hues, replaced by a muted, almost ghostly landscape. This isn't the grand awakening promised in spiritual texts or self-help gurus. It's a quiet desolation, a gnawing void that whispers of something lost, something irrevocably changed within the very fabric of your being. This initial brush with the truth, this first aspect of awakening, often manifests as a disorienting sense of alienation, a feeling of being a stranger in a familiar land. It's the unsettling realization that the maps you've been given to navigate life no longer align with the shifting terrain beneath your feet. Imagine for a moment the meticulous life of Elias. For decades, he had lived by the book, a meticulously crafted narrative of success, stability, and societal approval. His days were a symphony of predictable rhythms. The rise of the sun, the commute to a prestigious, if soul-numbing, corporate job, the diligent pursuit of promotions, the acquisition of material comforts, a sprawling house, luxury cars, an impressive portfolio. He was, by all outward appearances, the embodiment of the American dream, a man who had made it. Yet, beneath the polished veneer of his existence, a subtle tremor had begun. It started innocently enough, a fleeting thought during a particularly vapid board meeting, a momentary disconnect during a lavish dinner party where laughter felt forced and conversations superficial. These were not seismic shifts, but tiny, almost imperceptible cracks in the foundation of his carefully constructed reality. Then came the dream, not a nightmare, but a vivid, almost lucid vision that shattered his carefully maintained composure. He was standing on a vast, empty plain, the sky above a bruised purple, devoid of stars. Before him, a shimmering, opaque wall stretched as far as the eye could see. As he approached, he saw countless figures, blurred and indistinct, pressing against the other side, their faces contorted in silent, desperate pleas. He felt an inexplicable urge to break through, to reach them. But his hands, when he raised them, were not his own. They were gnarled, ancient, and bound by invisible chains. He woke with a gasp, the dream's unsettling emptiness lingering like a phantom limb. This wasn't just a dream. It was the nascent stirrings of his unconscious, a primal cry from the depths of his psyche. Elias, a man who had always prided himself on his rationality, found himself grappling with an unsettling disquiet. He began to question everything. The corporate ladder, once a beacon of his ambition, now felt like a hamster wheel. The material possessions, once symbols of his achievement, now seemed like gilded cages. He found himself standing in his opulent living room, surrounded by expensive art and designer furniture, and feeling profoundly, inexplicably alone. He would often stare at his reflection, searching for the vibrant, ambitious man he believed himself to be, only to find a hollow gaze staring back. Who am I, truly? The silent question echoed in the cavern of his mind. Is this all there is? His wife, Eleanor, a woman who reveled in their shared social life and the comfort of their established routine, noticed the shift. Elias, once the life of every party, became withdrawn, his customary charm replaced by a quiet introspection. He started spending his evenings reading obscure philosophical texts, his weekends wandering through nature, seeking a solitude he'd never before craved. Eleanor, accustomed to his predictable presence, found herself increasingly bewildered and, at times, resentful. "You're changing, Elias," she'd say, her voice laced with a mixture of concern and accusation. "You're not yourself." But Elias knew, with a chilling certainty, that he was, perhaps for the first time, becoming more himself than he had ever been. It was just a self he didn't yet recognize, a self that felt stripped bare, exposed to the elements. This feeling of being utterly exposed, of having the comfortable illusions of a lifetime stripped away, is a common experience on the path of awakening. It's the dissolution of the ego's carefully constructed defenses, the shedding of the persona that once served as a shield against the complexities of the world. For Elias, this manifested as a profound sense of disillusionment, not just with his external life, but with the very narratives he had internalized about what it meant to be happy, successful, and fulfilled. He began to see the subtle manipulations of advertising, the empty promises of consumerism, the superficiality of many social interactions. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing the intricate dance of societal conditioning that had shaped his every desire and aspiration. One evening, while walking through a dense forest, the scent of damp earth and ancient trees filling his lungs, Elias stumbled upon a clearing. In its center stood a gnarled, ancient oak, its branches reaching towards the heavens like supplicant arms. As he approached, a peculiar sensation washed over him, a sense of profound peace interwoven with an almost unbearable sadness. He sat at the base of the tree, his back against its rough bark, and for the first time in years, he wept. It wasn't a cry of despair, but a release, a letting go of all the expectations, all the burdens, all the lies he had unconsciously carried. In that moment, surrounded by the raw, untamed beauty of nature, he glimpsed the profound truth of his own interconnectedness with all things, and simultaneously, the terrifying vastness of his own individual existence. The emptiness he felt was not a void to be filled, but a space to be explored, a silence in which a new song could emerge. This realization, however, was not a comfortable one. It was a baptism by fire, a confrontation with his own shadow, with the parts of himself he had long suppressed and denied in the pursuit of an externally validated life. The archetype embodied by Elias is that of the seeker, a figure propelled by an unconscious longing for meaning beyond the mundane. He is a modern-day pure eternus, eternally striving for a perfection that exists only in the realm of the ideal, often neglecting the concrete realities of his emotional and spiritual landscape. The theme woven through his experience is the inevitable disillusionment that precedes true individuation. The pain he feels is the result of the ego's tenacious grip on familiar constructs, even when those constructs no longer serve the soul's deeper purpose. To you, watching this, know that this sensation of emptiness is not a sign of failure, but a powerful indicator that you are actively dismantling the outdated structures of your inner world. It is the ego's protest against its diminishing power, a psychic rebellion against the soul's imperative to grow. Do not recoil from this void. Instead, lean into it. See it as an invitation to excavate the buried gold of your authentic self. The solutions lie not in seeking external remedies for an internal shift, but in a radical reorientation towards your inner landscape. Embrace the discomfort, for within its raw edges lies the fertile ground for genuine transformation. Begin by questioning the narratives you've inherited, the beliefs you've absorbed without conscious assent. What truly brings you joy, not merely fleeting pleasure? What values resonate with your deepest truth, independent of societal expectation? Engage in shadow work, journaling about the emotions you suppress, the aspects of yourself you judge most harshly. For it is in embracing the entirety of your being, light and shadow alike, that you begin to fill the emptiness not with external validation, but with the boundless richness of your own emergent self. The profound internal shifts Elias experienced were not isolated incidents, but rather the initial tremors of a deeper seismic activity within his psyche, leading us to the second aspect of why awakening can feel so profoundly empty: the dissolution of ingrained relational patterns and the shattering of external validation as a primary source of self-worth. If the first stage stripped away illusions about the self, this next phase confronts the uncomfortable truth about how deeply our identities are woven into the fabric of our relationships and the opinions of others. It's the unsettling realization that the reflection staring back at you from the eyes of others was never truly you, but a projection, a carefully curated image designed to garner approval and maintain a sense of belonging. The more you shed the false self, the more disconnected you feel from those who only knew the old facade, leading to an isolating, albeit necessary, void. Consider the astute observations of Carl Jung, a pioneering figure in humanistic psychology who profoundly believed in the individual's inherent drive towards self-actualization. He posited that much of our suffering stems from a fundamental incongruence between our real self and our ideal self, often exacerbated by conditions of worth imposed by society, family, and relationships. Rogers argued that we adopt these conditions of worth, the unspoken rules and expectations about who we should be to be loved, accepted, or valued, and in doing so, we move further away from our authentic selves. As he famously articulated, The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. This isn't just a philosophical statement. It's a profound psychological truth that underpins the emptiness felt during awakening. When one begins to shed these external conditions of worth, the very scaffolding upon which many relationships were built can crumble. For Elias, this truth manifested acutely in his relationship with Eleanor. Their marriage, once a cornerstone of his identity, began to feel like a beautifully designed, yet entirely superficial, tableau. He realized that much of their interaction was predicated on a silent agreement to maintain appearances, to reinforce each other's carefully constructed personas. Eleanor valued his ambition, his material success, his social standing, all aspects of the external Elias. When he began to withdraw from these pursuits, seeking solace in introspection rather than acquisition, Eleanor felt threatened, not just by his change, but by the implicit challenge to her own reality. Her repeated lament, "You're not yourself," was, in essence, a desperate plea for him to return to the version of him that validated her world, her security. She projected her own needs and fears onto his evolving psyche, unable or unwilling to see beyond the familiar. This phenomenon, so eloquently described by Jung as ego projection, became a silent battleground in their home. Elias, once adept at playing the role of the devoted, successful husband, now struggled to maintain the charade. He saw Eleanor's emotional reactions not as personal attacks, but as reflections of her own anxieties, her attachment to the life they had built together. He recognized that her love, or at least the love he had experienced, was often conditional, tied to his performance, his ability to fulfill certain roles. This wasn't a malicious act on her part. It was the unconscious byproduct of their shared journey through a society that often prioritizes external achievements over inner peace. One evening, Eleanor confronted him, her voice laced with a raw hurt he hadn't fully appreciated until now. "What is happening to us, Elias? You're so distant. It feels like you're slipping away." Elias looked at her, truly looked at her, perhaps for the first time without the filter of his own expectations or her projections. He saw not just anger, but fear in her eyes. "Eleanor," he began, his voice surprisingly calm, "I'm not slipping away. I'm waking up, and it's unsettling. For both of us, I think." He tried to explain the void, the feeling of unmooring, the profound sense that the old rules no longer applied. But his words seemed to dissipate in the air between them, lost in the chasm of their differing realities. Her response was a tearful retreat, a closing off. "I don't understand you anymore, Elias." This lack of understanding, this growing chasm between deeply connected individuals, is a painful hallmark of this stage of awakening. It's the moment when the authentic self, no longer willing to contort itself to fit external molds, finds itself alone. The social structures, the friendship circles, even romantic partnerships that were built on the foundation of the ego-driven self, begin to feel flimsy, inauthentic. It's not that these relationships were inherently bad. Rather, they were often based on a mutual reinforcement of the personas, not the raw, vulnerable, evolving selves. The emptiness here is the space left by the departure of these unfulfilling connections, the silence that follows the cessation of constant external validation. Yet, within this painful severance lies an incredible opportunity. It is in this void that true self-worth can begin to blossom, unburdened by the constant need for approval. William James, the father of American psychology, often emphasized the individual's subjective experience and the pragmatism of truth. For him, the truth of an idea was measured by its practical consequences. For Elias, the practical consequence of his awakening was the increasing inability to sustain relationships built on superficiality. The truth of his old life, the one predicated on external validation, was no longer serving him. It was actively causing internal dissonance. This dissonance, while uncomfortable, was a sign of growth, a signal that his psyche was demanding a more authentic reality. The archetype Elias embodies in this stage is the hermit, a figure who withdraws from the conventional world to seek deeper wisdom within. This isn't an act of cowardice or misanthropy, but a necessary period of introspection and self-consolidation. The theme at play is the shattering of conditional love and external validation in favor of radical self-acceptance. The pain stems from the inevitable loss of relationships that cannot withstand the truth of an evolving self, and the confrontation with the internalized belief that one's worth is tied to external approval. For you, experiencing this profound emptiness in your relationships, understand that it is a natural, albeit agonizing, part of the journey. It is your soul shedding the chains of expectation and demanding genuine connection. The solution lies in a courageous commitment to your own authenticity, even if it means walking a path alone for a time. Begin to cultivate radical self-acceptance, acknowledging your flaws and imperfections not as deficits, but as integral parts of your unique tapestry. Practice mindfulness and self-compassion, recognizing that the external world's opinions are fleeting, but your intrinsic worth is immutable. Engage in relationships that celebrate your emergent self and gracefully release those that cannot. This doesn't mean abandoning everyone, but rather redefining the terms of engagement. Ask yourself, do these connections truly nourish my soul, or do they merely reinforce an outdated version of myself? Remember, as you bravely shed the need for external validation, you create the sacred space for genuine, unconditional love, both for yourself and from others who resonate with your true essence, to finally emerge. The emptiness is not a lack, but a fertile void, awaiting the seeds of your authentic self. As Elias navigated the treacherous landscape of his evolving self, shedding the illusions of external validation and confronting the conditional nature of his relationships, he arrived at the third and most profound aspect of why awakening can feel like a descent into emptiness. The confrontation with the collective unconscious, the shadow of humanity, and the dismantling of deeply held societal myths that once provided a comforting, albeit false, sense of security. This isn't merely personal disillusionment. It's a cosmic unraveling, a terrifying yet liberating realization that the fundamental stories we tell ourselves about existence, progress, and meaning might be tragically flawed or, worse, entirely fabricated. The emptiness here is the vast, echoing silence left when the grand narratives of civilization, those comforting, often manipulative, illusions, cease to resonate, leaving one standing alone in the stark, unadorned truth of reality. Consider the profound insights of Sigmund Freud, who, while often at odds with Jung, nevertheless laid a foundational stone for understanding the hidden currents beneath the surface of consciousness. Freud's emphasis on the unconscious mind, the repository of repressed desires, traumas, and societal conditioning, provides a critical lens through which to view this ultimate emptiness. When we awaken, we don't just confront our personal shadow. We begin to glimpse the collective shadow, the accumulated darkness, hypocrisy, and unresolved pain of humanity. This confrontation can be disorienting, even terrifying, because it shatters the comforting illusion of a fundamentally good or logical world, forcing us to grapple with the inherent contradictions and suffering woven into the fabric of existence. The emptiness, in this context, is the absence of comforting lies, the void left by the collapse of illusions that once provided a sense of order and purpose. For Elias, this final, most unsettling phase of awakening began subtly. After the painful shifts in his personal relationships, particularly with Eleanor, he found himself drawn deeper into the study of history, sociology, and psychology. He devoured texts on ancient civilizations, the rise and fall of empires, the history of social movements, and the psychological underpinnings of collective behavior. What emerged was a chilling pattern: the pervasive nature of power dynamics, the cyclical repetition of human cruelty, the manipulation of masses through fear and aspiration, and the relentless pursuit of material gain, often at the expense of genuine human connection and ecological balance. The news, once a source of mild distraction, became a painful mirror reflecting the very shadows he was uncovering within himself and the world. He saw the carefully constructed narratives of progress and prosperity for what they often were: elaborate facades designed to maintain the status quo and keep people distracted from deeper existential questions. The corporate world, which had once defined his ambition, now appeared as a vast, impersonal machine, consuming lives and resources for the sake of an abstract bottom line. He saw the advertising he had once created with such enthusiasm as a sophisticated form of psychological manipulation, preying on insecurities and fabricating desires. This wasn't cynicism, it was clarity, a brutal truth that ripped away the last vestiges of his naive optimism. One particularly jarring realization came during a seemingly innocuous documentary about the global economy. As statistics flashed across the screen, figures on wealth inequality, resource depletion, and the suffering of marginalized communities, Elias felt a profound sense of anguish, a collective pain that transcended his personal experience. He saw the interconnectedness of it all, the systemic injustices, the environmental degradation, and the way individual actions, however well-intentioned, often contributed to a larger, unconscious collective suffering. The emptiness he felt was the loss of innocence, the crushing weight of knowing. He understood now that the pursuit of personal happiness within a fundamentally flawed system was, in many ways, an act of unconscious complicity. How could I have been so blind? He muttered to himself one sleepless night, staring at the ceiling of his now too large, too silent house. How could we all be so blind? This internal dialogue, this desperate wrestling with the grim realities of the world, was his soul performing its ultimate shadow work on a global scale. He was confronting the collective shadow, the parts of humanity, greed, apathy, cruelty, that he, like many, had unconsciously projected onto others or simply ignored. This was the true dark night of the soul, not a personal failing, but a profound empathy for the suffering of the world, unfiltered by the comforting delusions of ignorance. Yet, amidst this overwhelming void, a peculiar clarity began to emerge. The Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, whom Elias had recently been reading, offered a profound anchor. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This wasn't about suppressing emotion or ignoring suffering, but about recognizing the limits of external control and focusing on one's internal response. Elias began to understand that while he couldn't single-handedly dismantle global systems, he could change his relationship to them. He could choose how he participated, how he consumed, how he lived his values. The final culmination of Elias's journey was not a dramatic explosion, but a quiet, profound surrender. He realized that the emptiness wasn't a punishment, but a clearing, a blank canvas upon which he could finally paint a life truly aligned with his values. He began volunteering at a local community garden, working with his hands, feeling the earth, and connecting with people on a fundamental, unadorned level. He started teaching himself to paint, not for recognition, but for the sheer joy of creation. He sought out conversations that were rich with vulnerability and genuine curiosity, rather than superficial banter. He and Eleanor, though their relationship had irrevocably changed, found a new, quieter respect for each other, recognizing the distinct paths their individual awakenings had taken. He still felt the echoes of the world's pain, but it was now tempered by a profound sense of agency and purpose. The emptiness had transformed into a spaciousness, a place where genuine connection and authentic meaning could finally take root. The archetype Elias embodies in his completion of this journey is that of the wounded healer, a figure who, having descended into their own depths and faced the collective shadow, emerges with compassion and the capacity to guide others. The overarching theme is the transcendence of collective illusion and the embrace of radical responsibility. The profound emptiness Elias experienced was the necessary void created by the collapse of outdated worldviews and the painful acceptance of humanity's shared burdens. Yet, it was precisely within this void that his most authentic self, unburdened by societal expectations or the need for external validation, could finally flourish. For you, who might be feeling this profound, unsettling emptiness as the world's illusions crumble around you, understand that this is the ultimate act of courage. It is your psyche rejecting the fabricated narratives and demanding a direct, unmediated encounter with reality. This isn't a sign of brokenness, but of a fierce, unyielding capacity for truth. The solution lies not in rebuilding the old illusions, but in embracing the power of stillness within this vastness. Engage in practices that ground you in the present moment, whether it's the rhythm of walking, the focus of meditation, the flow of creative expression, or the physical release of yoga and running. These are not mere distractions. They are pathways to embodying the wisdom you have gained. Read works that inspire critical thought and genuine compassion. Draw, write, create, allowing your inner world to find new forms of expression. As you consciously choose positive thoughts and actions, You gradually eliminate the lingering echoes of negative conditioning, transforming the perceived void into a boundless expanse of potential. This is your personal rebirth, a powerful transformation that allows you to move beyond the search for external validation and into the boundless wellspring of your own inner strength. The emptiness you feel is not a lack, but a profound spaciousness, inviting you to fill it with the vibrant truth of who you truly are. If you find this journey resonating with you, if you see glimpses of yourself in Elias's story, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment to share your insights and help our channel feel your presence. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, please send them this video as a necessary share. Thanks for watching. The end.